Hello, in this video, we are going to look at Python functions. So functions are this great way to be able to reuse our code time and again. We can just call this code that we have put inside of a function. And they're also a nice way to organize our code. Even if we won't be reusing the code, we can put it into a function so that kind of compartmentalizes it and makes it easier to follow along with what's happening with our code, since it's not all just sequentially occurring within our program. So let's set up a Python function. So Python is a little bit different from other programming languages. So Python functions start with the keyword def. So it's function definition, shortened down just to def. It does take a bit of getting used to, especially if you've done other coding with languages that use the function keyword. Just remember it's def. And then you have a descriptive name for your function. So let's use the name of print welcome. And then this is going to be a standalone function that we just call it. It does whatever it needs to do. We don't need to pass in any values, and it doesn't return anything. So what we'll do is have open and close parentheses that are empty, and then a colon. And now whatever code we have indented will belong to this particular function. So when we call the function, that code will run. And the code will not run unless we call the function. So here we're just going to do something simple, such as a print statement that says, hello class. So right now, if we run this program, nothing's going to happen because the function is there, but it's not being called. So in order to call the function, we will just copy the function name. It's best to copy our function and variable names. It causes less problems with typos. And then the open and close parentheses that are empty. So now if we run this code, we should get just the hello class message, and just as we would expect. We can call this function as many times as it makes sense in our program. So that's the most basic type of function. Sometimes we have functions and we want them to return a value. So maybe instead of printing the hello statement, we'll have it return the hello statement. So we will set up a function that returns a value. And then the program that calls that function can do whatever it needs to do with the value returned. So for this one, we'll do another keyword def, and then we will say create welcome. And then same syntax with the open and close parentheses, and then the same thing with the indented code. But instead of printing in this function, we are going to use the return keyword, and then we will do something along the lines of just hello. Same thing with this, we need to call the function for it to do something. But if we just call the function, and we can do that here, so we will call the function. If we just call the function though, we will not have anything happen with the value that's being returned. We need to actually proactively do something. So we could either we could put a print statement around our create welcome. But what we do most often is we will set the value that's returned from the function to a variable. So let's call our variable message. So we'll say message equals create welcome. And so now this text that's being returned will be assigned to the message variable. And then we can do something like print the message. And this just makes it a little bit easier for our program to work with that value in the future and whatnot. So I'll print the value returned from the function. So now we'll run this again. And now we have our first hello class statement there. And then we have our new hello message, which is what we get when we print out the value that was returned from the function. So those are a couple of different ways to call functions. We have other things that we can do as far as parameters. And so parameters are values that you pass into a function so the function can do more cool things. And so let's do a comment here for parameters. So parameters are values passed into the function that the function does something with. So the idea is the function is going to in some way modify or use the values that you are passing in. So we'll do another def here, and we will say, we'll do print welcome for user. And then instead of having our parentheses be empty, we are going to pass in a value. Let's call it user's name. And then in here, we will do print, and then let's say hello, and then a comma, and then we'll grab that variable name that we're passing in, that parameter. And so now when we call this function, so we'll do call the function, and we'll copy the value there. And we can either pass in a variable or we can hard code a value. For this example, I'm just going to hard code my name in there. And now we'll run this, and we should have 3 things printed out now. So there we go. We have our hello class, our hello, and now hello Ray. So obviously this third function has a little bit more customization. It's a little bit nicer user experience when you can, interact with the person's first name, that kind of thing. So that's using a parameter, but not returning a value. So let's do kind of the fourth way you can interact with functions, and that is by both passing in parameters and then returning values. So we will create a function that takes a parameter and returns a value. So we'll do our def here, and then we will say create welcome for user, and then we'll pass in a parameter. I'm using the same parameter name here, same parameter variable name. I don't have to. They could be different. They're unrelated to each other. So whatever I pass in here is completely different than what I pass in here. So if it's confusing, you can name this something else like user's name 2 or something along those lines. Here I'm going to do a return statement. So I'm going to return hello, and then I'll concatenate in the user's name 2. And then same thing where I need to call this function. So I will copy my function name, and then I will pass in all hard code. I'll just do a 2 so it's super clear that it's different. And so now we should have that should be good. Let's go ahead and test this out. There we go. I'm not, I'm calling the function, but I'm not actually doing anything with the value. So I'm going to grab this message variable, and I'm going to set it up very similar to how I set up the print statement up here. So we'll call the function, passing in the name parameter and returning the welcome message. So now we should get, and I'm just reusing the message variable. You could set up a different variable here if you wanted to be able to keep track of the different messages that the functions are passing back. But we'll run this again. And so now we should have our, whoops. Here it is. So you can see now we have the second version of that function. So you can mix and match. Sometimes you need functions that are standalone. Sometimes you need functions that both take parameters and return values. And sometimes you need one of the other options. And so the more you work with functions, the more you'll figure out like which is the best option to use for what you're trying to accomplish in the code. For now, just use functions as much as possible, and you'll get more of a feel for when it needs a parameter versus when it can just be maybe returning a value with no parameters. So I hope that is helpful. Reach out with any questions. Thanks for watching.